Welcome back to Redefine Parenting with your host, Veenu Keller. We want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and her network on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Zingo TV is a free app that can be downloaded on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Redefine Parenting is a revolutionary approach to nurturing our children. Veenu will bring you live experts, transformative insights, and a fresh perspective, all aimed at helping families worldwide truly understand their children. Together, let's give them a childhood they won't have to heal from. Hello, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Redefine Parenting. I'm Veenu Keller, your host, and today I have an amazing guest, Theresa Inman. And here's what I love about Theresa. I was on her podcast, but what I love about her is the synergy that we had, because I too was an infant toddler family specialist like Theresa. And so we had a lot of synergy between us and like what we do, how we do things. We work with kids on the spectrum for years, and just really being able to go into family homes and really help them to redesign a positive childhood environment for them. So Theresa, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Veenu, it is my absolute pleasure to be with you again on your platform now.
So let's just dive in and just kind of really help our guests that are listening all over the world to what does it even mean to have a positive environment for our children?
Well, a positive environment, I believe, starts in the womb, right? The first and best environment is, it starts in the womb where a parent, a mom provides safety and just a nurturing environment for their child. By that, I remember when I was pregnant, my mom would like read to your children, engage with them, even though they're in your womb. And later on, I remembered watching something, where these piano virtuosos, these children started to play like amazing piano, but because their parents were playing for them while in the womb. So it's really important that we start that process while your child is still in your womb.
I love that. And I also think, just to, piggyback off of that, is part of creating that positive environment while your children's in the womb is, what are the sounds they're hearing? What are the voices? Are they hearing loving voices? Are they hearing voices that are constantly yelling and abusive? And the language, is it negative? Is it positive? It's like when we're creating that environment and we're looking at sounds that kids hear, because like you said, they hear the sound when they're developing in the womb. And the energy, how are we creating that energy to bring them into this world?
Whew, yes. And that is so important, because the other thing too, with you saying that, when a child is in your womb, they're experiencing everything that you experience, right? So if it's trauma, they're experiencing cortisol. And we've learned that when those experiences happen in the womb, children behave in ways that they don't understand. When they're born, they behave in ways that they don't even understand. And you're like, why is my child acting like this? Well, that's because of the trauma that they were exposed to that they could not express. If a child is able to express themselves, then the trauma is actually it's less impactful, right? It impacts them less than if they're able to talk. So when they're very young, it's really important that we provide that loving, nurturing environment for our children.
I 100% agree, 100% agree. So that's when they're in the womb. So then what happens when they come out of the womb? What are some of the tips that we can help create for our listeners in realizing, for a newborn, for a baby, what is a safe environment, a positive, safe environment look like for them? And not just physically. I mean, we can discuss the physical stuff, but let's really dive into like creating that family for them, right? Like, what is it going to look like to be a part of this family now?
Right. So one of the first things, you want to make sure that your child, I'm big on skin to skin. Skin to skin is really important, having that contact, because it helps your child, it helps you bond with your child. And the more you bond with your child, the safer your child feels, right? And because that is actually also another protective factor, a great protective factor for trauma. So if there is trauma experience, however, if you've protected them with that feeling of safety and security that you get from skin to skin, from interacting with them, close up, then it's really going to help later on. One of the other things is when your child is first born, they're actually legally blind. They only see about 8 to 12 inches. So you want to get close to them, get your face up close to them, and be happy and smiling because your tone and your facial expression really go a long way in carrying that message of love and safety and security to your child.
I love that. I remember when I was a behavior specialist as an infant toddler family specialist, and I remember working with doing evaluations for babies, and we would have this like black and white little bullseye. We'd have it so close to see if they could track, and
Mhm.
it's because they can only see 8 to 10 inches, and they only see black, red, and white. That's
Yes.
it. And so I remember doing that to get to see if babies would track, if they're able to track and get their
Mhm.
vision on point and stuff like that. So yeah, it's being close enough to them so they feel the security of you, right? And I love that skin to skin because it's just so bonding with them. And it's giving them that safe, nurturing space to be able just to be them,
Yes.
you know?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And what we've also found too is that parents co-regulate with their children, right? So if your child is regulated, you will be regulated. If you're regulated, your child will be regulated. And that skin to skin is also another way to translate that, to transfer that feeling of, and that closeness and bonding, like you talked about.
Yes. And it's like, and we start to move into like from infant, and they get older and they start to they start to get their you know, being on track with what they're learning, the rolling over, the scooting, the crawling, the walking, whatever. And then we go into the vocabulary,
Mhm.
the auditory, like how they're hearing it and how they're expressing it. And you know, I know a lot of parents get so irritated with the crying and stuff, and it's like, how do we the first thing I think about when I think of positive environment is how are we regulating ourselves?
Yes. Right, exactly. And because if we're not regulated, again, we're not translating that to our child, right? We're actually being dysregulated, and they, of course, will feel that and they'll be dysregulated. One of the things I tell parents to do is if you're not feeling regulated, take a few deep breaths. Do the 4-7-8 breath where you breathe in for 4, you hold for 7 glorious seconds, and then you breathe out for 8. That is so relaxing that then you're able to approach your child and regulate and get into that co-regulation with your child, create that environment of regulation for your child. And then children, because we have mirror neurons, our children are able to see what we do and they're going to do what we do more than what we tell them to do. They're going to do exactly what we do, so they will see you, and that will be a tool that you've added to their toolbox very early in life.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I love what you're saying is that they mirror what we do. And so if we're acting in stress and we're stressing our body, they're going to do the best that they can with the stress that they're feeling in their body. And all they know how to do is cry. Like that's literally all they know is communication at this point is to cry. So definitely regulating ourselves. So we know that when we're holding them, we're creating that, again, it's that positive environment for them, and they're not feeling that push pull and that drama and the angst and the like the cortisol. Like we're not getting doused with it. So, and then what else would you share with our listeners?
So once you're regulated, another thing that's really, really important when you communicate with your child is tone of voice, right?
Mm,
If your tone of voice is happy, that's really showing your child, it's really translating that, it's really sending that message that I love you. I enjoy being with you. A lot of parents, and they tell me they don't know how. Like I've met parents who don't know how to play with their children and have fun with their children, and I had to teach them. So it's really important to have fun. Like once you take those deep breaths, smile, and smile on the smile works its way into you, right? Smile physically, and for it not to get into you. So start by smiling and, communicate with your child with varying intonation, right? Like don't make it, monotone, because then again, they're learning all this from you. And if they're not able to communicate effectively, it's going to be a stressful environment for you and for them, right? So just little things that you can do to help create that environment. So that's one of the things. And having them close up, having them, just just access the environment, right? Don't be afraid of noises and sounds. Even though, okay, yes, what I'm saying, okay, it sounds like I'm saying you're creating a chaotic environment for your child, but you want to expose your child to real life and then help them navigate that real life, help them regulate in those real life situations by how you're modeling that response.
Absolutely. So I have a grandson who's 7 months old, and we always call it his witching hour. Is like between like 4 and 7, where like no matter what you do, he's always cranky and stuff. But when I get there, like I'm making faces with him, I'm not getting irritated with him, I'm patting him, I'm smiling at him, I'm doing cheek to cheek with him, I'm giving him a loving, playful voice with him. And all of a sudden he starts to calm down and calm down. And my daughter-in-law will be like, I mean, can you do this every day at this time? And I get it. It's hard. Like, I mean, I'm a mom of 6. I birthed 4 of them, 2 of my stepdaughters. But I remember like my oldest son, the one she's married to, he was colic, and it was hard. Like he cried a lot. And I'm sure there's times that I probably could have regulated and I didn't. And I'm like, oh God, please just stop crying, And I was exhausted. I was depleted, and I didn't have a lot of help. And so I definitely get it. And so that's the other thing I would say is, it takes a village. Who can you reach out to say, hey, I need some support? It doesn't make you a bad mom to say, I need some support. Could you come and help me at this time? A friend, a family member, if they have other siblings, see if one of their little brother or sister can just hold them for a moment, and just to give you that breath, just to walk away for even 2 minutes, to walk away, leave the room, get a drink of water, come back and recalibrate yourself. And I love it because what I have noticed, Theresa, is looking at families that I've worked with when their kids were babies to looking at them now as teenagers. They have created such a beautiful bond with their parents because from the beginning, we taught parents how to really connect with their babies when they're upset. And that it's almost like the babies learn to trust their parents, that I'm not going to be in trouble for being this way. I'm safe to be this way. I'm safe to be upset with mom and dad. And now as they go through teenage lives, they still can go to their parents and feel safe to be with them.
Yes. And it is so important to create that, because if you get upset at your child who is upset, then you're telling them it's not okay to be upset, but you get upset. So it's really okay to be upset. We want to teach them how to respond in those moments instead of reprimanding for being upset. Think about it. Your child has been on this earth a fraction of the time. Let's not expect more from our child than we can deliver. And I'm not saying this with any kind of judgment, because trust me, I have made a lot of these faux pas, right? I've just learned from them.
Right. Right. We all have, right? I mean, and that's, I feel like, why you and I are in this field. Like we've done it, we've worked in it, we've seen it. And we're not coming from judgment. We're coming from, I've been there.
Yes. Yes.
I have been there.
Absolutely. And then to piggyback on something that you said, that village is really, really important. Vital that you have a village and do something for yourself, because self-care is actually selfless, right? A lot of moms, parents think that self-care is selfish. It really isn't, because your child deserves your best self. So if it means that you take, a few seconds to take a walk, take a bath, read a book, sip some tea, coffee, whatever it is that fills you, please take the time to do that. Because if you don't, you have nothing to pour into your child. You cannot pour from an empty cup. So fill your cup so you can pour it into them, and then you'll be able to, and have more to fill again. So because again, your child deserves your best self, not your tired, stressed out, wanting to pull your hair out self in a
I
bathrobe.
agree. I agree. I agree. And then the next stage, after we've done birth, we've done infant, now we're going into toddler. And again, I feel like everything we've set up into this point still exists. And now I think also we have to look at the safe environment we're setting up for our children too, the physical environment. So one of the things that I did, Theresa, when I had my twins, we made their room their room. They had their bed, when we did their bed. And we had their dresser and we had stuffed animals. And then we had a separate playroom for them. So their room, they knew their room was safe for them to have their emotions, safe for them to be in at night. We didn't have to worry about them hurting themselves with toys or anything like that. And to this day, it really has become their safe environment.
That is so important, because we all need a place a place of respite, right? A place that we can go to where we can just be, and not feel, be able to relax and not feel judged and be accepted, by ourselves. Because a lot of times, especially these days, I think there's so much emphasis on children, either they're doing a lot or they're like, I don't know, it's almost like being a recluse with their devices, right? And
Right.
we want to find a balance with that, because neither one is healthy, right? Because if they're overly um, scheduled, that could be an issue. They get performance fatigue. And I'm saying that, you're saying 2-year-olds, and I've seen, like, there are 2-year-olds who are in, dance and gymnastics. Like, there are all these little things that we have 2-year-olds in these days, right? I love playgroups. Playgroups are great because then they get to interact with other children. So that's wonderful. But be careful, like, you're not always having them doing something or sitting on devices. We want to really have a balance there, because it's just important. Doing too much of one thing, I mean, drinking too much water is a problem. So doing too much of
Right.
one thing can become an issue.
I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I can appreciate what you're saying again about overscheduling our kids, right? And getting them overstimulated, and that they have to do art class at 2 and ballet at 2 and gymnastics at 2. And it's like, they're 2. Like, get them in social groups. I can't agree with you more, because really right now what they need is socialization.
Yes.
They've had mom and dad and maybe siblings from birth to 2 at home. And now at 3, 4, we're getting them out into the world and starting to understand that the world is beyond who they are, because the world revolves around them in those ages.
Exactly.
And now they're getting ready to see that the world is a lot bigger than who they are.
Yes.
And getting them regulated in with other children, learning how to get out of parallel play and go into engaging play. And again, understanding their environment of how it's set up and how to navigate it.
Absolutely. Without too much parental intervention, I want to add, because so often as parents, we want to save our children from everything. And if they're not able to experience the world, it could become, we're first of all creating an artificial environment for them, right? We're sanitizing the environment. They're not able to authentically experience their world. So we want to make sure that we're not always intervening with everything. Let them show you what they can do. Even something as simple as, I was toilet training. I was helping a parent toilet train, and the little guy was mounting the toilet, and she was like, his foot's going to go in, his foot's going to go in. I said, just take a breath and just watch. Let's see what he's able to do instead of you trying to help him. Parents are picking them up and doing these things. And I'm like, if they're not able to really use those muscles and motor plan, then we're doing them a disservice. So let's allow our children to show us how amazing they are and what problem solvers they are. Because given the chance, man, they really show up and show out.
I love that. I tell parents all the time, just like you, is like, let them fall. And when they do, don't go pick them up. Cheer them on. Give them the power of self, like I tell my kids all the time, is to take care of yourself, like check yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to self-care. You have to self-care.
Yes.
Like not just self-care, but care about yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
yes, absolutely. And if they don't learn that at an early age, it becomes problematic later on, and it starts with the small things. I mean, everything starts with the foundation. So if they don't have the foundation of being able to fall and get up and dust themselves off, what will happen as they get older, right? The more we do for children, the more we create helplessness, right? We create learned helplessness. And so it's really important that they're allowed to, figure out how to move their bodies to accomplish something, whatever it is, whether it's climbing. And when they climb up, because I see this a lot with 2-year-olds, they climb and parents are like, oh, but they're going to fall when they get down. Let's just be close enough so that if they are falling, that you can help them, but don't help right away. Let them feel that, oh my gosh, I might get hurt feeling, because then they're not going to do it again when you're not watching. Because if you don't get to do that in that safe, loving environment with you, when you're not watching, they could really get hurt because they don't know how to get down safely. They haven't navigated that whole situation. They haven't thought it through because, hello, they're 2, or 3. So allow them to, but, just help them enough to get them to safety without fixing everything for them and making it perfect.
Yeah, I agree. It's like aid in your own rescue, and how do we teach our kids to do that? How do we teach our kids that they're self-sufficient, that they in themselves are a resource for themselves? They don't always have to look outside of themselves to save themselves. And if we parents are constantly like, oh, they're going to fall, like watching them, oh gosh, they're going to fall, they're going to be okay. They're not that far off the ground when they're learning how to walk. They're really not. They're going to be good, and I really promote that with the families that I worked with, is to allow their kids to have the space to make the mistakes. And even as we get older and into grade school, it's not micromanaging their grades. I'll tell you, my daughter is in 6th grade and she failed her math test. And she's like, I failed it. And I looked at it and I said, why are you so upset? She goes, well, I failed it. And I said, do you think it was an honest grade? And she looked at it and she goes, yeah. And I said, it was an honest grade. You didn't understand this. And I said, honey, I don't care about the grade, but I do want to make sure you understand how to do this, because you got to go on to the next chapter. So we're going to get you extra help. And she goes to tutoring. I said, make sure you take these papers, make sure they're sitting there to help you do the formula so you learn it. And she got in the car and I said, she goes, Mom, I learned it. Like, I understand now the areas of the triangle. I'm so excited. And I said, great. She goes, but it doesn't take my F away. And I'm like, I don't care. I want to celebrate. You understand it now. Like, that's all that matters. I said, and what did you learn from this? She says, well, I learned that I probably should have brought my papers that I was not doing well on before I got the test. And I probably could have got help. So I could have done better on the test. And I said, isn't that the truth? So I'm asking her the questions so she can learn from this instead of me telling her.
Exactly.
Yes. telling them how to do it, they're gonna be like, oh, okay, yeah, mom tells me. But if I'm asking them questions, then they're having to come up with their own solution. And she's realizing that she is her own resource. It's just a
And you are
beautiful concept.
empowering her.
Yes.
Yes, it is. And she feels empowered because she came up with the solution instead of, like you said, you telling her what to do and how to do it and all the rest of it. Because children, wherever they go, there they are. You're not always going to be with them. So empowering them to problem solve is really important. And something else you said that I want to echo a little
Yes,
bit.
please.
Um, it's not about the grade. It's about, like you said, the effort. It's about, the process, because the grade is done. That period, but the time, the whole process that it took to get that grade, the studying, just the things that they did, let's honor and recognize that instead of, oh, well, you got a bad grade. How does that child feel? That's a deflating feeling, right? Like all the life just is like, because of a grade. And like you said, it's not about the grade, it's about the effort. And then now, what have you learned from that experience?
Yes. And I will say that that's a lot of what I do with kids is like feeling it in their body. Like even my son, her twin brother, who's a grade higher, he is really keen about getting better grades and whatnot. And he got a C in science. And he's like, Mom, look at my grades. I got all A's and B's and a C. And I'm like, oh, you didn't like the C? He's like, no. I'm like, well, what does it feel like? He's like, it feels yucky. And I said, so what would feel good to you? He's like, an A. I'm like, so what do you need to do with that? And and he's like, well, I need to ask my teacher. I said, that would be a great place to start, what you need to do. And
Mm,
so the next day I asked him, I'm like, so what did your teacher say? He says, I had to work harder. I said, well, what does that mean to you? And he's like, I don't know. And I said, so don't you think you need to ask him and say, what does that mean that you want me to work harder? Like specifically, what can I do? So he can say, you're rushing on your work. If you want to do something, maybe instead of turning it in, being the first one to turn it in, maybe go back and check it and make sure you like the answers and then turn it in. And if you get specifics, then only you can change it. And I said, because honey, I don't care about the C. And here's what I want to tell parents too. There's a time to care about grades and there's a time not to.
mhm.
What I'm talking about with my kids, when I say I don't care, I know my kids are turning in their work. I know that they're doing the work. I know that I'm watching them study. I'm watching them do all this, and they're still making this grade. I'm not worried about the grade then. I'm worried about them getting the concept of what they're missing to get the low grades. Here's where I do care about grades is when my daughter's not doing her work and she's missing all these assignments and the grades are low because she's missing assignments. That's when I care about the grade. So I just want to be very clear to our audience of when is it time to care about the grade and when is it time not to, because I really believe in not shaming and blaming. I have a book, Teach Your Children That They're Enough, the QR code's above for all our listeners. And in that, it talks about this, about the grades and how we don't blame and shame our kids in order for them to have that positive environment, that safe and trusting space for them to be able to come to us and say, hey, I'm failing and I'm doing everything I can and I'm still failing, to give us the
Yes,
opportunity
yeah.
to help them.
Absolutely. Excuse me, because and the thing is too, even when they haven't done the work, you still want them to come to you. You want them to, you want them to trust you so they can come to say, you know what, my grade was horrible, but I really didn't try. But then you want that, like, you want them to be able to be comfortable enough with you to come to you with that information. You know, I remember my first son, one day we were talking, he had friends over because I made sure that my house was the fun house. I liked when they were,
At your house.
the friends were over and we were, I knew where my kids were. So one day, he had his friends over and he was like 14 years old. And he said something to me. And his friend was like, oh, you told your mom that? He goes, yeah, she's my mom. Veenu, I could have died that day.
Yes. Like,
I was
that's
like,
like the best
oh my
compliment.
God, yes.
When they can say that, yeah, that's of course I would. Like, to them it's like, why wouldn't you tell your mom? Again, it starts from when they're a baby. Like exactly what Theresa and I have been saying from the beginning. It starts from when they're in the womb. How are we creating the safe, trusting space for our children? What are they hearing? What are they exposed to? What are they seeing in the world when they come in here? And are we judging them as they're growing up and they're telling us the things that are going on? Or are we open to it? My kids, like I said, they're 12. So they always have stories to tell me from school. And I always ask them, when the other one's like, oh, that didn't happen. I said, it's not your story to tell. It's not your story. It's your sister's story. And I'm glad you have that filter of it, but that you're the filter of it didn't happen to, you're watching it. She's telling how she felt about it. And she'll go into detail on how she felt and how the girl hurt her feelings. And then she went to the teacher and they talked about it. And she's like, but we resolved it, Mom. But we resolved it. And I'm like, well, what did that look like? How did you resolve it? And my always question is, what did you learn from it? What did you learn from it? Because if we're asking our kids, what did you learn from it? And they can really recollect what they learned from it, they can take that lesson into tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. And at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. It doesn't, it's what did you learn from it? Who I worked with, and his room was always a mess. Oh my gosh. And mom would be like, what are we doing? Like this room is crazy. Like, when are you going to clean it? And I said, listen, just leave him alone. First of all, he's like 6 years old. Leave him alone. Let him figure it out. Because you're like, that seems to be the most important thing to you right now. So I ask him, instead of telling him to clean his room, ask him, how does it feel when your room is like this? And she did. And that changed everything,
Mm.
And he even said, when my room was a mess, I felt like I had an old man's heart. It's like, what? So, super important for us to just allow them, like even I think he's 4. So her other son is 4. And she was like, he doesn't like to bathe. He won't bathe. I said, well, maybe when he goes to school, his friends might tell him, well, maybe you should. And then that will have a greater impact than you forcing him into the shower and making bath time really aversive for him. Thankfully, a little while later, he's like, Mommy, I'm itchy. And she's like, well, how do you think you can solve that? And he said, if I bathe. And she was like, why don't you try it and see? Solve the problem. It was his idea to
Right.
bathe. And there's never been an issue since, right? But we get so caught up in, well, he's going to go to school and his friend's going to tell him he smells. Listen, as young as he is, it's not something it's not going to stick. It's not going to be his story forever. He's going to learn. It's better now that he does this than he's 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And then his friends are like, ew, stay away from him because he smells.
Right. Right. And I can relate to that story about cleaning the room because I did the same thing with my daughter. How does it make you feel to be in this room? And then when we cleaned it together, how does this feel? She goes, oh, it feels so free. And I said, does free feel good to you? Yes. And I said, great. So what do you have to do to keep it this way? What did we do specifically to keep it this way? And then with the bath too, and I can relate to that mom because I'm one of those moms that like, you got to take a bath every day, get the germs off you sleep better, blah, blah, blah. So I love what you did with that, Mom. Another strategy I do is what would make bath time fun for them?
Right. Yeah.
What would do they want to pick out the soap? Do I want to pick out the color of the washcloth? Do they want to pick out a different towel? Maybe they don't like the towel you're using. Maybe they like the fluffy towel. Do they want a different toy in it? What has to happen for them to want it? Make bath time fun for them. And so there's different techniques you can do, but either way, either your way, Theresa, with that family that worked out beautifully, or finding something that they like, it's still making them make the choice.
It is. And, some moms get really creative like this one. And, like you said, make it fun for them, right? So if there's something that they enjoy doing, bring that, if possible, into the bath. Like, for instance, this one little guy loved to draw. So mom got those, they're like crayons, but you use them in the bathtub and then they get soapy. So she brought that into the bath. So the water was different colors. He was able to draw on the wall, on the,
Love it.
wall of the bathroom, and just have a great time while he was sitting in the tub, and allowing her to bathe him. And even he started even helping with the process. But just, whatever it is your child likes, if there's something that they don't like, try to marry the two to make your life easier. So if they love car rides, or if they don't like car rides, bring something on the car ride that they like. If they like car rides and there's something that they don't particularly like doing, bring that activity. If it's something that really needs to happen, bring it with you. So, join the two together, get them together. And that way you're making it a little easier because they're already in an environment or already doing something that they enjoy. And when you add that thing that may not be their favorite, it won't seem so bad.
No, I love that. I love that. And going back to the whole positive environment, there's two areas that I really strive to help my clients with: having a positive morning and having a positive evening. How the
Yes.
kids start their day and how the kids end their day.
Yes.
And sometimes mornings, even in my house, can be very frustrating, especially with the twins yelling at each other and fighting and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But when we have those moments of calmness and greatness, I literally ask them, how did today feel? What was the difference of today than yesterday? And they're able to tell me. And I'm like, which do you want to have? Like, which feels better to start your day? Because when
Mhm.
I go and wake them up already, I'm already being positive, like, good morning. Today's going to be the best day ever. What do you want it to look like? I'm so excited to see you this morning. Like, just positive, positive. Like, we have a morning routine when we wake them up. And then at night, I have a positive routine. I do a love heart connection with my daughter. We do our prayers, we do our gratitude. Sometimes they listen to their I am statements on YouTube and they fall asleep to the I am statements, because it's so important that I'm not letting my child start their day off in chaos and end their day in chaos. It's creating that nice environment for them.
Mhm.
And so, like, even as babies, it's like, if they're crying, and I am a big advocate that sometimes they got to cry it out, but I'm also an advocate for allow them to know that you're there. You don't have to hold them and rock them and do all that. Just allowing them to know they're there, maybe turning on. And I'm finding out pink noise is better than white noise, which is like
Mhm.
rain and stuff like that. It's better
Yeah.
for a child because it takes away the distractions. It's like a meditation to their brain. Their brain's now ready
Mhm.
to calm down. It's kind of an anchor. Like, when I hear the sound, it's sleeping time. And so it trains them to sleep through the night. And
Mhm.
again, it's creating that positive environment that you and I have been talking about.
Right. Absolutely. And I love that. And YouTube is great for those I am videos. We had a foster child, and I would do that with him because, I mean, we had him because life was rough. Right? And he had behavioral problems. He was actually a child that I was called to a school with, who, they called me because they were having a crisis. And I went to the school, and he happened to be the cause of the crisis, and I ended up with him at home later that day. So I
Wow.
thought, "Oh gosh," like, I didn't know what I was doing, but I just knew that if I didn't take him, I life would have been, he would have been, from home to home to home to home to home, and he was already in a tough situation. I didn't want that to happen with him.
Mm.
So at night, I wanted to do all I could to make sure that he went to sleep in peace. So I'd do a Bible story with him, and then I'd do have him listen to the I am statements. And if we didn't do, it's like, Mom, are we going to listen to God Jesus tonight and do my meditation?
I love it. I love it. It sounds like you were very guided into that situation for sure, to give this little guy an opportunity. Again, what you did is create that positive environment for him. You gave him a safe, nurturing, positive environment that he could flourish in. And that's really what kids need. They
Yes.
really need, and that's what this whole call is about tonight, is that how do we create this positive environment for them from the time they're in the womb, which I loved how you started that off, to like going through toddlerhood, childhood, and then we come to the teens. And let me tell you, the teens, It's a whole different story when you get
Yes.
teenage life. It's like they know it all.
Uh-huh.
They know, especially 17 and 18-year-olds, because that's like I coach a lot of them. They know that their parents think this way. They know their parents are thinking that, and they know that that's not true. And I said, well, your parent has 45 years of knowing what's true. You have 17 years of knowing what's true. Tell me what you think about that. And they're like, well, no, I see your point. I'm like, good. I want you to see my point, because let me tell you, we have to be here to guide you through modesty. We have to be here to guide you through safety of the world. We have to be able to guide you of like what you're putting in your body and what it does to your body, because you don't know the effects later. And I know you can't see everything that we see, and that is called a filter.
Yes.
It's called the teenage filter.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes, yes. My son, the artist who painted these amazing,
Oh, beautiful.
who created these amazing paintings behind me, we had that issue. So at 17, so he was the same one that at 14, I tell my mom everything. And at 17, I don't know what happened, Veenu. I don't know. But again, he thought he knew everything. And I thought, oh Lord, one of us is going to end up in prison for the rest of our lives. Me for killing him, and him for just being out there and just trying everything. He was like, Mom, I have to find out for myself. I was like, yes, but I went, because having two brown boys, I thought it was really important for me to learn, and it wasn't, I wanted to help out children in the juvenile justice system so I could prevent my children from going down that route. So I thought if I help somebody there, chances are not my son. So not my Dre. And I was like, oh my goodness. But he was like, he got arrested one time for getting money out of what do you call it? Like one of those vending machines.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And the police officer defended him. He said he did it without damaging the machine. He did it with care. He did it with, like he's a genius. And it's just like, that's not how I want him to show his genius. So the police officer actually came to court to defend my child because he was so respectful and he was so sweet and he was just so awesome, even though he was doing this criminal thing. And I was like, oh Lord, like, I don't want this to be our future. I don't know what I'm going to do. And thankfully, by the grace of God, when he was 21, he's like, Mom, I am so sorry. I thought at 17, I knew everything. Now I realize I don't really know anything. I'm always learning. And I thought, oh, thank you, Lord, because I was concerned about our future.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have my 26-year-old. I remember when he was about 19, and I think I've shared this story on my show again, but he said to me, Mom, don't let this go to your head, but I'm so glad that you were overprotective. Like I needed to know where they were going, who they're with, is a parent's going to be there at night, because I worked 3 jobs. I was a single mom for a long time. And he's like, and I get it now, because it showed you loved me enough to care, because my other friends who I thought their parents were so cool because their parents didn't care, those kids are in jail. Those kids, their parents don't have a relationship with them. They're living on the streets. He's like, so thank you for caring about me enough. And he's like, I still didn't like you taking my phone away from me all the time or grounding me. Thank you for loving me enough to care enough where I was going and what I was doing. Yeah. And again, like it's 16, 17, they don't get it. They don't.
They don't.
So to all your parents out there, we empathize with you because we've been there. And they too will apologize to you one day.
Absolutely. But however, you have to be consistent in your love, and leave the judgment, because again, they're still learning to navigate the world. Even though, they're making mistakes, allow them to make those mistakes and allow them to correct those mistakes. Give them that opportunity, give them that space that you're not always solving it for them. Because when I went to I was called to pick him up, and my aunt's like, are you going to leave him there overnight? I think I should. I said, I think I should, because he needs to learn, that I'm not always going to be there to save him. So, and it's fine. And one of my really good friends worked at that, the, they called it the Youth Assessment Center.
Mm.
He worked there. And I was like, yeah, we're just going to let him stay. I said, I'm going to visit him so he knows I'm here for him and I love him. But I am not going to bring him home. I'm going to allow him to experience this for even if it's just one night, so he can realize that, mommy can't always save you. I will
Yeah.
still love you. I told him, I said, I don't care what you do. I will still love you. And they would, both my boys, they'd be like, so what if we hurt somebody? I said, first of all, I know you won't. However, I will still love you. What if I know you won't, I'll still love, because, they were just, being silly. But yeah, so they knew, like, unconditional, my love for them is absolutely unconditional. However, they're going to have to learn some lessons, because we're not going to keep going down this cycle. Because I see so often parents try to save their children from themselves, and you can't. You have to allow them to fall and get up.
Yep. And I've been in the same predicament with both my sons. And I'm like, I love you. You made this choice. These are your consequences. What did you learn from it? What are you going to do differently? That's it. Because
Yes.
it's not good or bad. Everything happened the way it needed to happen. And you're going to see how it plays out in your life. And better that it played out in your early 20s than your early 30s.
Exactly.
And you know what? You're going to thank me for it later, because I'm going to allow you to live out the consequences so you can get the lesson. Because if I just took the consequences away and I tried to help you get out of it, you're going to go do the same thing again, because you're not learning. And this is not my lesson. Here's my lesson as your mom: how to love you without enabling you. That's the lesson that I got.
Yes.
And I'm still an advocate for that, is that, I talk about that in my book, about not giving them the space to be who they need to be without feeling judged, and that's it. It's the minute we judge our kids is the minute they can't trust if we're going to judge them again, if they're going to get punished for it. That's where kids don't feel seen and heard. They feel judged. Like, that's the common thing with all the kids I coach. And I've coached thousands of kids over the years. The number one thing is, my parents don't, they don't listen to me. They don't hear me. They don't see me. They judge me. That's the biggest thing I get from kids today.
Yes. And it's actually really sad, because a judged child does not feel loved. A judged child feels that they're not enough. And, Dr. Ravi Rajaratnam wrote a book called Hardwiring versus Rewiring. So if you hardwire your child with love, with acceptance, with all the things that we're talking about, they're not contributing to the billion-dollar industry later, with the therapist and the other stuff to rewire.
Right.
So let's work on hardwiring our children with that feeling of safety and security. Because when they feel that, nothing can take that away from them. The world will toss and it will turn. They will remain stable.
For sure. For sure. And if we can give our kids what it takes to have that open, safe, and trusting space and boundaries of positive environment from the time that they're in utero to the time that they're adults, they're going to pass that on to their kids too.
Yes.
I was talking to my son the other day, and we're really rewiring the way we eat and eating a salad before we eat our proteins and stuff. And he said, you really eat salads all the time now. And I said, I really should have ate salads before vegetables, before I ate anything, because it really helps our digestion. And he's like, so we have to do it? I said, you don't have to. I said, but I'm giving you a choice to, because I'm doing it this and I'm noticing this. He says, oh, and I said, and I'm hoping that you'll get a habit of this and then you'll give it to your kids.
Yes.
Because when I know better, I do better. And when I do better, I can teach you better. And because I've just learned this a couple months ago from my health coach, I'm now implementing in my life. And again, the mirroring, they're like, oh yeah. So before dinner, they're like, are we going to eat a salad first? I said, oh my gosh, yes, we are. Let's get the salad out first, you know? So it's really great that I've been able to implement this with them. And it just goes back to what we were saying is our kids mirror what they see.
Yes.
If they're in a negative environment, they're going to create a negative environment for themselves. If they're in a positive environment, they're going to create it. So we have 1 minute left. Please tell me, like, you know, how our friends can find you and if there's any last nuggets you want to give us.
Okay, so last nugget. Parents, don't judge yourself. You are doing the best you can with the information that you know and, you know, your experience. You know, I got into a domestic violence situation, which I never said I would, which I thought I never ever would because my mom was in one. And, you know, I swore I wouldn't. And so it just goes to show, regardless, your children they're going to become like you. So please, you know, you're getting some tips, some strategies right now. Please use them, study, research, do some more. I actually, if you don't mind, I actually have written this book, Pathways to Early Communication, which will help with that, with the early communication and developing those skills really early on so that you can prevent that rewiring that happens later.
I love it. And how could they find your book?
It's on Amazon. It's also on Barnes and Noble. So if they just Google Pathways to Early Communication, they will find it.
Okay, beautiful. Well, Theresa, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, and we'll hope to have you back on again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Veenu. It's been such fun chatting with you again.
Okay, we'll see ya.
Okay.
Us on another episode of Redefine Parenting with Veenu Keller. Follow her on Instagram at Veenu Inspires. To learn more about Veenu, as well as download her free ebook now, go to www.veenuinspires.com. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it,